in their authority to protect the institution of natural marriage are doing what is right in the sight of God and deserve our commendation. And we know that those politicians that use their influence to support, defend, and promote counterfeits to marriage, whether they are same-sex marriages, civil unions, or domestic partnerships, are doing something that is evil in the sight of God and deserve our condemnation. I think one of the harsh realities that we have got to face as a people that we are going to have to choose between a homosexual agenda or religious liberty, because we simply cannot have both. We as a people. Now I want to give you an illustration. This is from this morning's Washington Times. This is a quote from Lieutenant General Thomas P. Bostick. Now, he is the Army's Deputy Chief of Staff. This is the man that's responsible to oversee the personnel in the United States Army. As Senator Inhofe said yesterday, a major vote coming up on Tuesday on the repeal of the law that prohibits open homosexual service in the military. This is what Lieutenant General Thomas P. Bostick said, today's Washington Times. Unfortunately, we have a minority of service members who are still racists and bigoted, and you will never be able to get rid of all of them. But those people opposing this new policy will need to get with the program, and if they can't, they need to get out. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to choose as a nation between the homosexual agenda and freedom, because the two cannot coexist. Every advance of the homosexual agenda comes at the expense of liberty, particularly religious liberty. And we know what is right in the sight of God and evil in the sight of God when it comes to the transfer of wealth. The Bible teaches the voluntary transfer of wealth, where you and I, motivated by our compassion and concern for our fellow citizens, voluntarily give of our own resources to alleviate their need. But those on the left believe in the involuntary transfer of wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the transfer of wealth at the force and point of a gun, the transfer of resources from one citizen to the pocket of another. And ladies and gentlemen, that is theft. The involuntary transfer of wealth is nothing more than legalized theft and legalized plunder. It is a violation of the 8th commandment that says, "Thou shalt not steal." Now, I would submit to you, we know that politicians get every last bit of their authority from God. We know that there are certain things that are right in the sight of God, other things that are evil in the sight of God. And I submit to you that the conscience of the man of God cannot rest. The conscience of the man of God cannot rest as long as the authority of God is being used to trample the will of God. The conscience of the man of God cannot rest as long as the authority of God is being used to trample on the moral law of God. Now, one last thought. We know another thing about public officials. They are ministers and servants of God. Paul twice refers to them in Romans 13 as ministers of God. He uses the Greek word diakonos. We get the word deacon from that. We get the word ministry and minister from that. They are literally ministers or deacons of God for our public life. A third time, he refers to them as servants of God. He uses the word liturgos. We get the word liturgy from that, as if Paul is going out of his way to drive home the point that political figures, those in political office, exercise a vocation that is every bit as sacred as the role of the pastor of your church. Now I ask you, who has a greater interest in the selection of the ministers of God for our culture than the people of God? Now, some will accuse me of advocating for a theocracy because I believe November 2nd we are going to choose the ministers of God. We're going to choose the pastors of our public culture. Will accuse me of advocating a theocracy in which God rules a nation through its clergy. To borrow a phrase from a politician who has troubled America by forsaking the commands of God, let me be clear. I am not talking about an arrangement in which God rules the United States through the church. The role of the church is to be the conscience of a nation, not to govern a nation. If you believe in theocracy, then the dark and dangerous and devious religion of Islam is the religion for you. Now, Sam Adams, I'm talking about the same arrangement. The arrangement I'm talking about is an arrangement in which God guides and governs the United States of America through statesmen who are committed to align the public policy of the United States with the will of God. I'm talking about an arrangement in which God, to borrow a phrase from the Founding Fathers, in which God governs and guides the United States through statesmen who are determined to align the public policy of the United States with the laws of nature and nature's God. I'm talking about the same arrangement that Sam Adams spoke of on July 4th, 1776, when he said, "We have this day restored the sovereign to whom all men ought to be obedient. He reigns in heaven from the rising to the setting of the sun. Let his kingdom come." Now, I believe on November 2nd, we have a fresh opportunity as the people of God to restore the sovereign to whom all people ought to be obedient. And I say we do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Times best-selling book right now is this book.